Well, happy Victory Monday, everyone, and welcome back to the Coach McVay Show presented by Microsoft Surface, Copilot, plus PC. I'm JB Long with the head coach of your Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay, and we don't always start on this note, but how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing better, I should say.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Starting to be able to eat a little bit, but it was a good, challenging weekend. But what I will say is, most importantly, my wife, little boy are doing good, and I was just really pleased with the overall approach of the team. The maturity, just such a cool reflection of great coaches, great players, and being able to operate in your absence. If there's a part of you, you're like, man, it's awesome to see that they just, do better without you. And then you're kind of like, where I don't really have much value here.
Just a little bit humbling, maybe?
Yeah,
I don't know.
A lot humbling, but in a very cool way.
I know you don't want this show to be about you. We'll talk about the team and the game plenty, but I think our audience would be fascinated to just hear the logistics of it all without some of the gruesome details.
Yeah.
When did you actually fly to Arizona?
Sunday morning.
Okay.
Me and Tony Pastor flew on Sunday morning, and fortunately it was such a short, convenient trip that you were able to say, all right, when we were getting ready to get on the bus Saturday, you're still feeling really banged up, and you're worried, because it ran through my house the way that it did. It's like, all right, I'm going to be in close quarters on the bus, on the flight. This probably isn't the smartest thing, and I'm still feeling really freaking bad. And so the smart thing, and, credit to, Reggie and Carter and, Tony, there were so many people that just, on the last second were able to adjust and adapt. And I got a little bit more rest, didn't feel all that much better. And then Sunday morning, you start to turn around, corner a little bit, but and guys did a great job. And then the adrenaline, once the game played out, kicked in. Once the game ended, you're like, ooh, I really am not feeling as good, but I feel a lot better today, and grateful to be on the mend.
Good to hear. At what point during that whole weekend do you make the decision, hey, it's probably best if we just kind of let Mike have the direct line of communication to Matthew for this game so that the operation
It really wasn't until, I was like, all right, I missed a lot of the stuff where there's a lot of the communication and stuff, things that we go through, and able to communicate throughout the game. But, Mike does, I have such trust in Mike, and Mike sends the plays in during the course of the week. He's, he and I, and really the offensive coaching staff do everything. And I have such confidence in just his ability to, whether it be call plays or get it in. And that decision was made once I wasn't able to do a lot of the lead up work that I'm accustomed to doing, and figured, hey, most importantly, the decisions are what's best for the team and for that game. Us being able to collaborate, but him being able to take on that role, we thought was the best thing. And he did a great job with the rest of the offensive staff. Just can't say enough about him.
You mentioned it happens during practice. For those who do attend training camp, you've probably seen like Mike LaFleur with the walkie-talkie.
That's right.
I know Matthew wasn't at training camp or playing in training camp, but that is a familiar for them or part of their work rhythm and routine.
That's right.
A lot of Mondays I spend filtering through fan feedback. Sometimes it's, JB, you got to ask Sean, why did he abandon the run in the red zone? Why did they get to that first, red zone trip and throw it 3 times? Well, the good news is this week is that's a question for the Mike LaFleur show, right? We don't have to worry about that this week.
I could allude to the first sequence. We felt like we had a good look on a play action. They did a good job defending it. And then the second down, you got a run called with a possible option, and that was, one that we've hit a lot of on that second down. And then they did a good job defending the third down with the inside switch. But we made up for it on the next 2 drives.
You don't have to explain yourself to me. 2 of those throws should have been touchdowns. I'm sure Matthew would say as much. I know how much confidence you have in this staff and how much you value the continuity. Was it affirming, though, to see it in a live game setting? I know you like to say this is a team, a player-led team, a staff-led team, but to see everyone kind of pull their role in that fashion.
You know what, and it's funny, you talked to the staff about it, is I wasn't surprised. But I sure was appreciative and grateful. And so there's a difference, because you're saying, oh, those exceeded. No, that those were the expectations because of the confidence that's been earned, whether it be Mike or, the rest of the offensive coaching staff. But I'm sure grateful and sure appreciative. And you're able to have situations like this arise, delegate, be able to shine the light on people that deserve to have the light shine on them, and what a cool thing. Wish it didn't have to come about, with me not feeling great. But, sometimes you see the best in people when they're asked to take on bigger roles or responsibilities. I thought our players stepped up, made a bunch of plays. I thought Matthew's ownership was on display. But Mike and really the whole offensive coaching staff, they're phenomenal. And really it's just, I don't want to get in the way. You realize just get the heck out of the way and let them do their thing.
Not that, but it is a big week ahead for your
Yeah.
Rams and your family. So in that broader context, what's the plan?
Yeah, plan is let's have a great week of preparation. Let's try to go, get one against an excellent opponent. And then after that, then we'll go to the hospital and welcome baby number 2.
That's amazing. Good
Yeah.
for you. I mean, to think you got the Lions on 10 days rest and then the Seahawks on almost no rest, and you're going to
we're
become
going to be
a
present, though,
family
JB.
of 4.
You don't let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. One day at a time, let's be totally present.
No doubt. Does a 2-year-old have any sense of what's coming
Oh,
down?
he knows. He
does?
knows that his baby brother's in mommy's belly, and so he's excited. He's a very curious little boy, What's that? Who's that? What's going on? He's very interested, and his personality is so fun to be around. He's going to be a great big brother, and I know he knows how to say, what's going on now. Whether he truly understands once it happens, that'll be for the Coach McVay show in a couple weeks.
I mean, I just think about what it's like to feel out of control, and 2 of those settings are when you're really sick,
and
then childbirth, where you just realize that as much as you'd like to kind of manage your circumstances, you got no say.
Oh, that's
sometimes.
yeah, no doubt. And the respect that I have for my wife and women in general is, I know this. I'm not built for that, but it's amazing. Just what a miracle, what a blessing, and we're very excited for number 2.
We'll be praying for you. Hope it's a
Appreciate
great week
that.
on and off the field. All right, to yesterday's win, 45 points. The Rams get their 10th victory for the first time in franchise history. 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, no turnovers. I think that's a good time to jump into our film breakdown segment presented by Microsoft Surface, Copilot Plus PC, where every day is game day. And a couple of your late touchdowns. Let's start with Puka, that first play after the landman interception.
Yeah, I mean, really unbelievable. A little double move right here. You got it versus a bump look. Johnson had kind of triggered on a similar route earlier, and what a job by Matthew to get the ball up and down, and then Puka just to be going grown man and to be able to finish this play. The excitement, and then we talk about complimentary football. What an interception by Landman, and then the very next play to be able to score. Outstanding job. This was big time, and it was a tougher leverage. Good patience got him to trigger, and then being able to go attack the ball at the high point, and then to be able to finish into the end zone, similar to his seam touchdown he had earlier in the game. Great protection. I thought our offensive line was excellent all day, and this was a huge play right here, big time. Sudden change, good complimentary ball there.
And then the longest run of the season for the second week in a row, the longest of Blake's career.
Yeah, this was cool because it's back-to-back plays for us offensively. Great job by Blake, feeling the over pursuit. Alaric Jackson gets the key, cut off on the backside, and then for Blake to be able to have the juice. Thompson's a really good safety. I don't know what he was doing right there on his little celebration, but Blake is, I love Blake, but the cutoff by Alaric Jackson, and then for him to be able to close space on the post player, slash running where you just have the juice to be able to make somebody miss and to go finish. This looks like the guy we know and love. He's playing his best ball. He's just getting better and better. I think he and Kyren are really complementing each other. But this was huge. And, to be able to have an explosive run game like we've had, especially the last couple weeks, it's a big advantage for us. I think guys were connected. Our backs are pressing it, seeing it really well. And, it takes all 11, but what a stud Blake is. Really happy for him.
You said it with respect to the Puka touchdown, the complimentary ball, right? Defensive play, takeaway leads to touchdown. Before that, Blake, it was the punt return, right? Smith slips up the sideline.
Yeah, that was an amazing punt return. Just toe tapping the sideline. That was big time. Good point there.
So first multi-touchdown game of Puka's career, which when I say it, it's still hard to believe, right? For all the things he's done through 3 seasons, hasn't quite unlocked the end zone, maybe until now. Is there any reason why you think it's happening more than ever?
Well, I mean, he's still scoring. I think he had 6 his first year, and then I think maybe he only had 3 last year, and he's got 6 this year. But he's got a rushing touch. He's had a couple touchdowns through the ground, and he's doing a great job. I know this guy's playing as complete as he's played. He's affecting and influencing the game in a big way. Watch the way he competes without the ball. You can give him the ball as a runner, and he's made plays for us. And, his ability to make the contested catches. I mean, you look at all of his catches that he had yesterday. They were all key and critical. I thought his first catch of the day really got us going. They're playing a tight man coverage. He and Matthew on the same page on a 2nd down and 9. That was huge. And then to be able to hit him again on an in cut off of a play action the very next play. But catches a couple seams and then catches that play. Just a big-time day all around for him, and he was outstanding without the ball as well.
We've talked a lot about your goal line, 3 tight end and Davante Sep. I want to look at both of the short rushing touchdowns yesterday. It's the 3 tight ends and Puka. So what is that, like 13 and a half personnel when you can insert that?
You could call it that,
yeah,
13 and a half. But it's, just whatever one of those receivers based on kind of how we're aligning in the specific grouping. But it was cool to be able to see him in there on those as well.
When you drafted Blake, I was probably guilty of this too. I said, oh, the Rams have a type, right? Because we had saw you really leverage Kyren and his abilities. But the more I see them play in tandem, I see more like different styles and maybe even prefer slightly different run concepts, which seems to have your whole menu of runs available. To what extent is that accurate in what you're able to do now?
Here's what I think's great. They can both do everything.
They can.
So it's not like we're calling this play when Kyren's in or we're calling this play when Blake's in. But they are different types of runners, both very efficient, but their own style, where, Kyren does a great job being able to press it, kind of slipping in and out of stuff. Blake he'll feel the over pursuit, can put his foot in the ground, cut back across the grain. You see the speed to finish on some of that. But I think they're both excellent. They're both not limited in any way that we can use them, but they are different in their own way. But there's some similarities like we've talked about. But the best part is that they spell each other. They play off each other really well. Ron has a great feel for being able to, kind of pick and choose his spots, and when one needs a blow, the other comes in, and I think they positively feed off one another. I thought Blake articulated it really well in his post-game presser about how they positively push each other, but they support each other. It's a special group, and I think that room is a reflection of what's special about this team as well, JB.
The offensive line must love games like that. How have you seen them dictate terms lately, Sean?
Well, I think they were able to dictate terms, just getting connected, and then I thought, everybody being on the same page, and they made a decision to come out in a lighter grouping when we went 13, and you have to be able to make people pay if they want to be able to do that, and you could see kind of what their thought process was, and I thought our guys were able to execute at an efficient rate that made them say, okay, this, if they want to be able to do this, we'll continue to try to execute in this part of our game, and ultimately it's about the execution, but the guys did a great job. And I thought, Coleman, Shelton, and really the guys across the board, the ID, the recognition, the ability to get connected, and the ability to be able to get a hat on a hat and allow our backs to be able to press it one gap at a time was huge.
I'm reminded that Colby Parkinson is still only 26.
It's wild.
4th touchdown of the season yesterday. What do you think has defined his growth in year 2 in your ecosystem?
Well, I think you're just looking at a guy that's just more present, more enjoying the opportunity. I think trusting himself. I think he feels really believed in and supported, which is the truth. Whether it be by his teammates, by his coaches. I think you're seeing a guy that is very settled in his life overall. He's got great faith. He's got a great wife and, beautiful baby, another baby on the way. And, I think you're just looking at a really settled person, very still and at peace and really just present, enjoying the opportunity that this is a blessing. It's never a burden. And I'm watching a guy just continue to, just play the way that he's capable of, be so accountable where there can be improvements, but man, playing really well and doing a tremendous job influencing and affecting our game and our team in the right way.
Going back to the signing of Davante, I thought one of the biggest benefits for this year's offense could be the volume of pre-snap motion for your tight ends, for Puka, because you got, an X who can flat out win from a stationary position. To what extent has that been the case, that others have benefited from his isolated ability?
Oh, it's huge. You look at the touchdown that Colby had. He draws the double, and now Colby's got leverage in a man coverage running with Baker, and it's an unbelievable job by Matthew to be able to say no quickly and yes to Colby, but he affects and influences coverage, obviously what he's done in the red zone, but a guy that can win the ISOs, and he's special. He draws. I think the thing that doesn't show up is, that they should have a stat for is all the PIs he's drawn or all the penalties. He ends up getting the illegal contact on the double move that he, beats Johnson pretty good on. But he's been special, and I think he's also brought a leadership. He came into this locker room with such respect, but the way that he handles himself day in and day out, the respect that he commands by his daily presence is both on and off the field, and he's a stud. I'm really grateful for him.
All right, here's kind of one out of left field, but there was a big NFL conversation this week behind the scenes about cadence. J.J. Watt and some others weighed in. There was a study coming out of Carnegie Mellon, of all places, about how unpredictability in the timing between pre-snap motion and the actual snap can influence a quarterback's success in a very positive way. So I just wanted to ask you about that in general, like any reaction to that without having to, read the study or the outcome.
You know what? Ryan Wendell sent me that article. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I did see just kind of the headline. And here's what I will say. I don't know specifically what it's alluding to as it relates to the motion, the snap count, but here's what I do know. The one advantage you have offensively is you dictate within the 40-second play clock or the 25-second play clock, depending upon if it's out of a new quarter or a clock stoppage, when the ball snapped. And we want to use cadence as a weapon, and that's a complement of, all right, different times when you're snapping the ball, and that could be with motion or without motion or getting up. And so that's one of the things that we always try to be able to talk about, and I think Matthew does that as well as anybody. And I know Mahomes and Tom were the ones they kind of isolated, but I don't know the semantics or the specifics, but I'm at least somewhat familiar just from, the headlines, if you will.
Well, where I was going with that next is I think Matthew's underrated in his use of cadence, 100%. Even in situations where everyone's like, okay, he probably won't snap it here. It's an end of quarter situation or something, and he's still been able to get some violations there. And it's why the home field advantage that you're building at SoFi matters so much.
It's
coming
huge.
into a week like this.
No, there's no doubt. It's going to be big this week. The home crowd has made a tremendous difference. And, to be able to have our verbal cadence and to be able to do that and to continue to lean into what Matthew and the offense does such a great job of. And then also on the flip side, be able to force, the opponent into their silent cadence and get that place rocking. That'd be big.
Have you ever asked about the origins of Turbo Set?
Is
there any story behind that?
It's really, the word kind of communicates that it's going to be quickly, snapped, and but it kind of stands out. There was a different word that we used that where I was before, early parts of Washington, and then when Jay Gruden ended up taking over and I was in the coordinator role, that word was the word that we decided to be able to use, and it seems pretty universal around the league.
Universal is the word for it. Yeah. Switching to defense, in this final month of the regular season, how much of a priority is it for you and for Chris and others to kind of settle into a more stable place at corner, with D. Will out yesterday, Akello ramping up, to get to a place where who's going to play and when?
I think it's a luxury that we do have to have four guys on the outside that you have tremendous confidence in. I think you want to continue to be able to figure out, all right, what's the best way to be able to take advantage of, those three or those four guys, depending upon who's up on our 48 on game day. I think Aubrey has such a good feel, but there's a lot of snaps throughout the course of the game. I think it's important to let guys get into a rhythm, but I think it's also important to be able to keep them fresh throughout. And the game flow dictates that, and then sometimes it's matchup oriented, or who we playing, what are the different plans of attack that we have relative to our coverage menu and different play ops. And so those are things that I was pleased with the way that those three guys played yesterday. There's always going to be some learning ops, but getting D. Will back healthy, I think those are positive problems for us to be able to work through as a coaching staff.
Am I remembering correctly from this summer when you kind of moved Josh Wallace to the back end of your defense during the preseason to give him a new lens and a new role and diversify his skill set?
Yeah, I can't say enough about what Josh Wallace has done. Played 45 snaps yesterday. He could play safety, he could play outside corner, and then obviously you've seen him play in the slot for us right now, a role that we've seen Q do a great job of in the last couple years. Our goal was to say this guy's a really good football player, and you just don't bet against people like him. Mm-hmm. Figured it out at Michigan, came here, found a way to be able to make himself valuable, and a lot of it was at the outside location. Then he could, his ability to understand the game from a holistic perspective. I think he's a good blitzer. And so he could play safety, he can play outside corner, he can play inside corner. He's playing our slot position right now at the Star, and he's doing a great job. And I think, Aubrey and Beaker deserve a tremendous amount of credit. But, Josh is so conscientious. I think really guys like he and Jalen McCullough, they do so much for our defense. And, Jalen McCullough was playing three different spots. He played, more than 10 snaps at three different spots yesterday. Wow. And did a hell of a job, but I want to give a shout out to both those guys. But Josh has been awesome, and a lot of that was because of his value, and now you've kind of leaned into a more specific role for him. But he's earned that, and he deserves all the credit he gets.
Desjuan Johnson was another interesting wrinkle yesterday. I think his only prior appearance was in Philly when Nick was out sick, right? So he plays 27 or so snaps yesterday. Yeah. How'd he hold up, and what led to that?
I think it was really what we thought was going to be best for this game. And, Joe Caniglio leaning in with that group. And really, it was cool to hear him talk about Dez and the way he played in those 27 snaps. And this has been, Dez deserves a lot of credit for what he's done behind the scenes. I thought he did well against Philly. He's just, stayed in it. He's really worked hard in practice, whether that's from a look team perspective or even if he's getting looks with our defense when our offense is serving the defense. And he's just gotten better. He's getting more familiar and more comfortable for what is being asked of him, playing a new position. And he had 27 snaps and, made a big impression and made a, big impact on the game in a positive way.
Because that was another summer necessity switch as well, right? When you got a little light at that outside backer position. So
and guys that are so smart, that are conscientious, that are tough mentally and physically, that then have some position flex, that adds so much value to us, especially when you're talking about your 48 and 53.
What a luxury. Excuse me, too, to handle your business early and to get some top-line guys off the field in that fourth quarter. When get into December, I can only imagine, how valuable that reduced snap count is for some key people.
There's no question. Our defensive guys got a lot, less workload than they're accustomed to. We were able to get some offensive guys out towards the latter parts of the game, and that is a big deal. And anytime that you're able to get into those positions in those types of games, that's something that you don't take for granted.
Last one for me, Ethan Evans building some variety into his kickoff game, it looks like. Putting a few down in the landing zone.
He did a heck of a job. I think he's getting more comfortable being able to hit a variety of kicks. He's doing a great job holding. I think, the more that you can do, the more valuable you become. He's obviously an excellent punter for us, become a really good holder. That he never done that coming out and then adding the kickoff to his arsenal. That he can bang it deep, but a couple of those liners, hitting one that ended up becoming where it rolled in and became a touchback. That was big for us, and he's just getting better and better, and, happy for him.
Don't waste another minute with me. Get out of here, man.
No, I appreciate
Go get to your
man.
team and your family. Cannot wait for this week on
Let's
and
go.
off the field. All the best to all the McVays. All right, for Sean McVay, I'm JB. Thank you for joining us for the Coach McVay Show, presented by Microsoft Surface Copilot Plus PC.